Deadbeat brother crashed my car, and my entitled parents told cops that I crashed it because he couldn't go to jail. Now both my brother and father are in jail. I have an older brother, Dave fake name, who has always been a jerk to me. There's only a 1-year gap between us. But he liked to beat me up when we were kids, and he always acted like anything that was mine was also his. He was also somewhat of a golden child, which made me miserable. So no surprise, I moved out at 18. My uncle is a now retired police officer, and he took me in after I left home. He even hooked me up with a decommissioned Crown Vic. I absolutely love that car. I don't know why. But Dave hated the fact that I had that car. He drove 3 beater cars into the ground, while my Crown Vic kept chugging along. Well, after his 3rd beater finally died when he drove it into a pole, he asked to borrow my car. I had a bad feeling and said I wasn't going to do that. He called me entitled and said he needed a car to get to work. I told him to take the bus because I know how he drives and my Crown Vic was off limits. My parents called me after that and told me to just lend him my car. I said I wouldn't, no matter what they said. I rely on the car, and need it as well since it's my personal transportation. Dave wasn't the only one in the world with a job he needed to get to. My uncle congratulated me for standing up to them and gave me a high five. A few days later, when I got off work, the car wasn't where I parked it. I called my brother's cell, but he didn't pick up. Then I called my parents and asked them if he had taken my car. They denied it, so I said I was going to call the cops, and then they admitted he'd borrowed it because he needed it. I told them he better bring it back right now, or I'll have police looking for him. They called me a jerk, and then called Dave to bring my car back. He showed up in the parking lot in my car 20 minutes later. I demanded to know how he stole my car, and he held up a set of police Crown Vic keys he'd bought online. Some were made universal. I told him if he ever stole my car again, I'd have him arrested. Then he had the audacity to ask for a ride home. I told him he made me wait in the December cold after stealing my car so he could walk. He called me a jack before I drove away. After that, my uncle installed a tracking device in the car. When Christmas Day came, I was celebrating with family like every year. The roads were cold and icy, so I had to be very careful while driving. By now, you're probably clued in on the title. Yeah, Dave borrowed my car again during the Christmas party. Apparently, he decided he was going to go pick up a friend and figured I wouldn't notice. But I did when I looked out the front window and saw that my car was missing. I pulled up the tracking app and saw that he was a few miles away. Then I called his cell to yell at him. Everyone in the party saw this and asked what was going on. I said Dave stole my car again. And my uncle confirmed it wasn't the first time. Dave told me over the phone to screw off, and he'd be back soon. I said he better not have been drinking, but he just hung up on me. Well, while I was watching the tracker app, the dot stopped and didn't move for a while. Soon we got a panicked call from Dave asking for help. He'd crashed the car because he couldn't handle the icy roads, and he wasn't used to a rear-wheel drive vehicle. So we piled into my parents' minivan and followed the tracker. We found Dave by the road and my Crown Vic nose deep in a snow-filled ditch. My uncle was furious, as it was formerly a car for his department, and I was mad as hell at Dave for stealing my car again. My parents wanted me to let it go, but I said enough was enough, and I was going to call the police. Dave begged me not to, because he really had been drinking before he set off, and would get a DUI. I said he was going to pay me back for my damned car then, or I'd sue him. Well, as luck would have it, the police were already aware of the accident, and were driving in to check on the scene. Someone else had called them, I guess. My parents tried to say that I was the one driving the car, and they were just there to help me. I said that wasn't true, and my uncle backed me up. In fact, one of the cops that was there recognized my uncle, and they had a chat. Then they went to Dave and asked to see his license, which I then found out was suspended after he'd crashed his previous car. Then they breath tested him. He wound up with cuffs slapped on his wrists, while my mother was crying and begging the police not to take him away. But the officer just said that she and my dad could get arrested too for lying to the police. That shut my parents up, and we got back in the minivan. The Christmas party ended early, and my parents drove me and my uncle home since he rode with me. They didn't say much to either of us during the whole drive, and just sped away as soon as we were out of their van. They nearly slipped off the road themselves doing that. My brother was let out of jail the next day, and he looked so scared that he was practically crying. The cops there had roughed him up a bit while talking about prison and the SHT they'd seen go on there. Dave had actually pissed himself during that, and they let him take a shower. That's when my uncle started cracking up and revealed to us that his friends in the department never filed the DUI, just the charge for the suspended license. which was about a $600 fine. My uncle said he just wanted to teach Dave a lesson, and this would be the one and only time he'd ever get his help. Dave then apologized to me and said he'd pay to have my Crown Vic fixed and would never touch it again. When it got pulled out of the ditch, the front end damage was actually minor. It needs a new front bumper, a headlight, and a grille. The damage was just superficial, thankfully. My parents have pretty much glossed over the whole incident and acted like it didn't happen. Dave gave me the extra Crown Vic keys he'd bought online and said this has taught him a lesson he won't soon forget. Update 1. Well, this is an update to my previous post. And this all went down yesterday. My brother promised he'd pay for the damage to my car, and he kept that promise. The body shop guy cut me a deal at a fair price for replacing the damaged front end parts on my Crown Vic. He just asked if I cared whether or not they were OEM. I told him I didn't care if they were OEM, as the car is far from new, and I didn't need the bill to get too high. I'd thought that the damage was only cosmetic. But there was some minor damage, and the body shop will need to pull out. But it's not frame damage, and is an easy job to straighten out, they told me. There was some minor damage to the fender panels, but they said they were easy to fix, especially since I don't care that they aren't perfect. And the new parts will be painted in a matching color, so that's good. My brother willingly paid cash in advance to the body shop after getting the quote from them. He seemed all too eager to hand the money over and politely bid me goodbye. I won't say how much it cost, but it definitely hurt his savings, especially after the fine he had to pay for driving without a license. He was wanting to get a replacement car, but he won't have one until his license suspension is over anyway. And I don't know when that'll be, but I think it's going to be a good while. Anyway, my parents had given my brother a ride to the body shop, and as soon as he was out the door, they stayed and admonished me for making him spend all his money fixing my car. I imagined they were about to say something about how I should have just let my car go to him to begin with, and how this all would have been prevented if I had. But something in me snapped, and I cut them off. And that's when it spilled out. I called them out on everything that came to mind. All of the favoritism. How they act like my brother has always been more important. I had to move in with my uncle just to escape their unfair treatment. They let my brother steal my car, and then tried to lie to me until I threatened the police. They themselves tried to lie to the police by saying I was the one driving when my brother crashed my Crown Vic, and so much more. And I ended it all by saying how stupid it was that they were mad at me for making my brother pay for the damage that he caused by stealing my car on Christmas Eve and driving it without a license while intoxicated. By the time I finally stopped, I was nearly out of breath. My mother was crying. My father was red in the face and looked like he was about to explode. Then he just took my mother by the hand and started to walk out. But some guy, I don't know who was sitting near the door, blurted out, "You guys are narcissists." Well, that was enough to set my father over the edge as he started attacking the guy. My father is not a small man, and he knows how to throw a punch, so he started beating the crap out of the poor guy like a mad gorilla. I yelled for the clerk to call the cops, and they did. My father heard that and bolted out the door and drove off. He actually left my mother behind, crying in the lobby. The police had to pick him up at home, and he surprisingly cooperated when he was arrested. But he's looking at charges for assault. The guy he beat up suffered a very swollen black eye, a possible broken nose, and a concussion. I was there when they were loading him into the ambulance to get him to the hospital. My mother has called me, crying and blaming herself. My uncle is saying it was about time my dad tasted some karma. And my brother is doing everything he can to stay out of it. This is not how I thought this was all going to go down. Update 2. Well, my father is out of jail now, and I'm told he looks like crap. My mother paid his bail, and he came out looking nearly as beat up as what he did to the guy he attacked. Apparently, he picked a fight while in jail over the weekend and got swarmed by other people there. My uncle went with my mother when my father was let out and described to me what he looked like. He said he's got 2 black eyes, dark bruises everywhere, a fat lip, and he's missing a tooth. My uncle said he didn't try to blame anything on me. In fact, he barely talked. I just got in the minivan with my mother and went home. And I did manage to get in contact with the guy my father beat up. A friend of a friend knows him. I'll call him Dan for the sake of saying this. My father beat Dan up pretty bad. He's got a concussion from his head hitting the wall after taking several punches. His nose was indeed broken. He's in a neck brace, and he spent 2 days in the hospital. When I asked him what his plans were, he confirmed he was indeed going to be suing my father and had already spoken to a lawyer. I told him to do what he had to do. Beyond that, I have no details on the case. My friends and I put together a gift basket for Dan. and we each put some money into it since he's not going to be able to go to work for a while. My uncle even contributed, even though he didn't have to. Dan was very thankful when we presented it to him. My mother hasn't tried to call or text me since my father was released. But my brother has told me through texts that she's still been crying a bit. And my father has remained pretty much silent since he got home and hardly leaves the couch. The last time my father was like this, he didn't speak to anyone for at least a week. But this situation is way worse than what made him go silent last time. Final update. I know it's been months, but I finally have an update for everyone. The guy my father beat up is doing fine now. Other than needing to have his nose fixed, the rest of his wounds healed fine. He filed a lawsuit against my parents, and my father was initially as stubborn as an ox about it, and was dead set on fighting it. But he ended up changing his mind. Why? Well, for multiple reasons. The first one was when someone in the middle of the night broke several of the windows on my parents' minivan. My uncle says that the police were pretty sure it was done with a BB gun. I guess that makes sense. But no culprit was found. My father replaced the windows on the van himself, as he's done it before. And no one has vandalized the vehicle since. But I think whoever did it may be friends or family with the guy my father beat the SHT out of. The next thing was that my father was told by a lawyer that he had no chance of winning in court. There was CCTV footage and multiple witnesses, including myself, and no judge in their right mind would want to listen to my father. The last thing that made him change his mind was when my mother threatened to divorce him. And I guess that was enough for him to finally surrender in mediation before the lawsuit went to full court. He settled with the guy he beat up in the mechanic shop for an amount that I haven't been able to find out, as my mother won't tell me. But I'm guessing it was a lot. My father has also been forced to go to anger management as part of the agreement. I've only seen him a few times in the past few months. And it's pretty obvious he's still mad at me because he avoids looking at me and constantly looks mad. But after everything that's happened, he no longer has a way to justify his anger. Not even to himself. He just sits quietly and fumes. He's also apparently cut back on drinking a lot. Probably because that's one less expense he and my mother would have to deal with. Now on to my brother. You may all be pleased to hear that he's been working hard to mend things with me. He's moved out of our parents' house and in with a friend. He's got his license back, but no car as he can't afford one yet. Instead, he's been riding a bike to get to work. His relationship with our parents is more strained now though. After a while, our father started turning his ire on my brother. He finally started blaming him for all of the SHT that happened over the holidays, and our mother had to make him calm down. He's a lot calmer now since he started going to anger management. But it's obvious he still hates me. But it's not like my parents are offering to do family therapy or couples therapy with each other. And I suspect the reason why is because my father doesn't want more people telling him he's wrong. My mother, brother, and uncle all agree with that too. My father is still employed. His clientele dropped for a while, but he's back on his feet now. My mother says he wants to get a denture made at the dentist for his missing teeth. Yeah, it turns out he lost more than one tooth after getting out of jail. It was just one initially. But several of his upper teeth were already in bad shape, and he had to have several of them pulled. So he's missing 6 teeth on the upper left side of his mouth now. A lot of people in my early posts chastised my uncle for keeping my brother's DUI from getting filed. And I was on the fence about that myself. My uncle read a lot of the comments, and finally, after a few months, he said that he'd never do something like that again. No matter who it is, I agree with him, and my brother knows too. So no one is ever going to expect that my uncle will just fix something if they get arrested. So that's my final update, everyone. See you all later. P.S. Yes, my car is doing fine. It has a tracker and a kill switch now. And there have been no mechanical issues with it since it was repaired. Editor's note. I think this might be a fake story because it's all too convenient. But I will keep updating as the OP updates. Second story. My deadbeat husband abandoned our toddler and baby on a busy road. And they were almost dead. So I packed my bags and left. Now he had a meltdown and was begging for forgiveness. What should I do? Hey Reddit, I need to share this story because I'm still shaking from what happened. I'm 25 and have been with my husband 30 since 2018. We have a 3-year-old girl and a newborn boy. But tonight, things almost took a turn for the worse. My husband has always had trouble paying attention, but I never thought it would come to this. Our neighborhood is weirdly laid out, with cars zooming by at crazy speeds at all hours of the day. I was folding clothes when I heard our toddler screaming, "Dad, help." That tone made me drop everything and sprint outside. What I saw made my blood run cold. Our newborn in his stroller, careening towards the busy street. I screamed and ran to him, barely stopping the stroller in time. My baby girl's hands and knees were scratched up because she tripped while trying to run after the stroller. I snatched up my baby, heart pounding, and scanned for my husband. He wasn't watching. He was chatting with neighbors, completely oblivious. The anger I felt was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I stormed up to him, shouting in disbelief. He looked shocked at first, then realized what had almost happened. The apologies and tears came pouring out, but it was too late. I couldn't wrap my head around how he could be so careless, so blind to our toddler's screams and the stroller rolling away. I packed up the kids and left, staying with my parents. They're on my side. But my husband keeps texting, begging forgiveness, and calling it an honest mistake. But I can't shake the terror of almost losing my baby because he couldn't focus for a single second. My baby girl got hurt in the process because he couldn't pay attention. I almost lost my son because he couldn't pay attention. I can't stop crying. I feel so guilty. I wish this had all never happened. Sorry, it's short. I just want to hold my babies, and I can't stop shaking every time I think about it. What if I was just 1 second late? Would I have been planning a funeral? And the reason I left the house instead of him was because I hated that house. I don't feel like it's safe for the kids with all the traffic, and I was right. It's my husband's workhouse. I can't be running either. I had a C-section less than 6 weeks ago. A lot of people are saying, why wasn't I watching the kids? I was doing their laundry like a parent. Does he take them for walks to have bonding time with them? He literally created this by himself. This has never happened before. How was I supposed to know? And people are saying, why didn't I get him checked out? I'm not his mother. He is 30 years old. I'm sick of people acting like I have to parent my own husband, while I literally have a newborn and a toddler. And I'm still healing from a C-section that I teared my stitches from when I ran to get my baby. I don't care if it was his ADHD. The court wouldn't care either. If he had killed my child, he would have gone to prison either way. Relevant comments and additional information from the OP. A specific YAM 2166. Okay, he was 100% wrong. And I'd be livid just like you. However, I'm a little confused about the situation. Like, why was your baby just in a stroller unattended? Why did the stroller randomly go into the road? Since it sounds like you were at home, is this maybe something y'all normally do just to have a place for your baby to sit out front of your house when your toddler is playing outside? And maybe it was a freak accident. I'm going to be honest, as a mom, most of us have stories of near-death experiences with our kids. We can be naive and stupid and expect a little child to have more awareness and survival skills than they do. When my son was 2, we had a horrible experience with an escalator, and I still have times where I can't sleep because of it. We are all idiots when it comes to parenting, because how can you know until you live it? And seriously, every parent has one of these moments unless you're one of those insanely lucky ones. I still really don't understand the whole scenario of what happened. But to me, it seems he really has remorse and feels terrible. And once you go through something like that, you never forget it. So if he cares and loves your kids, he's devastated and has learned a hard lesson. I don't know that your response was the best, but I get why you did it in the moment. But I think you guys have a serious talk and maybe look into moving if possible. I wouldn't go straight to divorce like Reddit loves to preach. I think there is a solution here, and I'm so sorry you're dealing with this. It's literally the worst feeling in the world. OP. Hi love, let me just clear it up for you. So I was sitting inside in the lounge room, and there's a huge window behind the TV that was a little open so I could hear outside. That's when I heard my toddler scream for her dad to help. When I was outside, he was standing on the neighbor's driveway. I assumed that he must have left the baby literally on the road, because there was no possible way that it would have rolled off like that. And my toddler was playing with the neighbor's cat before she noticed her brother was rolling away when I confronted him about it. I tried to explain, but he just kept stuttering. I still don't know what exactly happened. I don't know if he didn't put the brakes on the stroller. If the wind blew him away, I just don't know. My neighbor contacted me and asked if I wanted the security footage because his wife is 100% on my side. So I'll probably find out once it gets sent to me. Procrastinator. I want to acknowledge that this is a horrific situation, but saying, I don't care if it was his ADHD, isn't going to fix anything, and will probably only make things worse. Talking and thinking about it like he intentionally tried to kill your child isn't either. With ADHD, you actually do not register things like this at all sometimes. Life expectancy for those of us with ADHD is actually significantly lower because many of us end up, often accidentally, killing ourselves. It is not the same thing as carelessness, but learning about ADHD a little deeper can help you guys be safer. Understanding how my ADHD works and using different than standard precautions, like what my brain needs, has actually most likely saved my life. Tell him what you want from him. That's probably because he gets his ADHD better under control, whether that be through prescription medication or a more homeopathic method, that you get a different place if possible, that he does not take your kids out in your front yard without you, etc. Also, neither he nor the neighbor noticed, but you heard your kid from inside. Something seems off here. Were your neighbors just watching the stroller roll towards the street? Was your husband on the other side of your house, where he couldn't see the stroller? Were you already walking outside as this unfolded? I'm trying to understand better what was going on here and why your husband or neighbor did not notice, but you did from inside. People with ADHD tend to be incredibly good and quick to act in emergency situations, so this is especially weird. I'm absolutely not accusing you of leaving anything out or anything, but I'm asking you to think about what your husband and the neighbor were doing that neither noticed. That smells fishy. This is a horrible situation. I lost a pet due to the inattention of ADHD, but I can't imagine losing, or even nearly losing a child. OP. That's why I'm waiting for the footage. It doesn't make sense how this all happened. I don't know how to explain my house. There's a huge window in the lounge room. It was open a little too. I can listen out. The neighbor's house is 2 houses away. We are at the end of the street, near the main road. When you first walk into my house on your left, there is the lounge on the right. The kitchen. When I got up, I couldn't run that fast because I'm still healing. Sorry if this doesn't make sense. When I ran outside, the neighbor's wife was running for the stroller, but was still far away, and the neighbor was helping my little girl off the road. That's all I seen. I'm just waiting for a response from them. My husband was just standing there, hands on his head, doing nothing. The envenomed lingling. I effing screamed when I read what happened. Are you okay? Like, did you do any more damage to yourself? You literally just had a baby. What the F was your husband doing? Being outside with small children, especially on a busy street, should be treated like watching babies swim, because anything can happen in an instant. I hope you are okay. And also, I don't know, but do you all have cameras in your house? I wonder how long your husband was talking to the neighbor. OP. I tore my stitches from the C-section and had to go to the ER while I was there. I made sure my baby girl got her knees and hands bandaged up. The crazy thing is, I didn't even realize I was bleeding until I was in my parents' car. My mom pointed it out. She panicked and took the baby boy back to their house, and my dad took me and my daughter to the hospital. OP updated 11 hours later. Update. The neighbor's wife sent me the footage, and I really can't just wrap my head around it. So my husband was walking with the stroller, and my toddler was in front of them when they passed the neighbor's house. My neighbor was outside, washing his car, and my toddler saw his pet cat and stopped to go pet it, as did my husband. Stopped. I left my baby on the road. He didn't even bother locking the wheels, and he walked all the way up the driveway, not even bothering to look back at the baby. He had his back to him for about 5 minutes before the stroller just suddenly started moving. I think it's because the road is on a hill, or it could have been the wind. My toddler never went near the stroller. The stroller went down the road, as did my toddler. That's when she started screaming and running for it when she saw it. When the neighbor started running after my daughter when she tripped, he tried to pick her up. That's when the neighbor's wife's car came into the frame, and she stopped and started running back to the way the stroller was coming. After that, you can't really see anything because it's all out of frame, but you can hear all the commotion. My husband just stood there the whole time, hand on his head, with a blank stare on his face. He didn't even do anything when our toddler was crying from hurting herself. He only started crying when I confronted him. What do I do? I genuinely do not know what to do. I'm panicking. This was never the life I wanted for my kids. I don't understand why he was standing there. I have not even gotten a text or a call from him since I got the video. It's just been silent. I just can't hear the sound of my daughter's screams. That's the sound that no mother wants to hear. I can't explain it at the moment, but it felt like my blood went cold. And I just felt pure fear. I never want to watch the footage again.